Okay, welcome back. Let's move on to the player. So double click the player to select it. As I said, this is a prototype kind of approach. So we're going to try and keep this as concise as possible and throw as much logic into this one object, the player, so we don't have to create a bunch of objects. So let's think about everything that we'll need. The player needs to be able to jump, so we need some kind of jump speed for him. There needs to be gravity to pull the player back down. I think I want to be able to, because the game is going to speed up over time, and the platforms are going to be, moving at faster and faster speeds, and there's different heights between the platforms. I need to be able to control how high I jump. So it can't be just a standard jump that's the same height every time. I need to be able to, depending on how long I hold my jump key, my height has to change. So I need some kind of way to control how much jump time you can have. So that'll be at least 3 variables. So let's add these 3. So I need, as I said, we need to have the gravity. Usually I use gravity somewhere in the range of 0.3 or 0.4. So I'm just going to do 0.4. We need a variable for jump speed. So this is how much you can jump. So I'm going to go with jump speed. Let's do 7. Once again, you can change these if you want to change the way the character jumps. And we need something called a jump time. So jump time will tell you how many seconds you have to make a jump. So for how long can you be jumping? This doesn't mean like how long the guy is going to be in the air for. It's more like how long can I be applying this upwards force to make him go higher and higher and higher. So in this case, I'm saying 0.3 seconds. It might be something else. We can change this. And then I think I need one more variable to actually measure how long we have been jumping. This is because jump time needs to be the one that never changes. And then another version of jump time needs to be one that keeps track of how long we've been jumping for. So I'm going to call it jump time as well, but I'm putting an underscore in front to kind of signify the difference between the two. So make sure you pay close attention to jump time with an underscore and without an underscore. Okay. Those are my variables. And you can see also this one I set to 0 because this one is the one that's going to be used by the step event to constantly change and measure how much time we've spent so far jumping. Okay, I'm going to close these. So let's talk about all the events. So we're going to start with the create event. Oh, I forgot to assign the sprite for the player. So let's just do that quickly. Sprites, player. Okay. So in the, sorry, one more thing. Also the collision mask for the player should just be set as the player, S player. So whatever sprite you assign to the player, which should be S player, the collision mask should be the same. When he jumps, we don't want him to change his collision mask. Okay, in the create event, we're going to be using, just like last time, and I think in our previous game, and maybe even our 2 previous games, we had a way of keeping high score. We're going to do that again. So we're just going to use the functions to open the file, the high score file. So we're going to do any open. We're going to call it, I usually go with save data.ini. You can literally call this anything. You could call it highscores.ini. I'm not even sure. I don't even think you need to put the .inis on there. You could just call it whatever. It doesn't matter. Then we're going to set the global high score to be equal to whatever this value is inside this file. So any read, I'm going to read a real score. So this is the section of the file that we're reading. This is the key. I'm just going to call them both score. And then the default value should be 0. So if you've never played the game, there should be no high score. Okay, and then we're going to close the file. There's no need to keep this file open. Perfect. So when the game starts, this character is created. First thing we do is we set the high score. And notice how this shouldn't be a responsibility of the player object, but because this is a prototype, as I said before, we're going to cram a lot of things in here. Next thing, we need to also set up all these other variables, globals that we use, like pausing in game speed. So I'm going to go global.paused and set that equal to true. I'm going to set the global game speed as well. So game speed, I'm going to set it to 1. This is the initial speed of the game. And then I want to set the image speed of my character to be 0. Because I want it to be frozen in time. So I don't want the animations to be playing. Okay. Finally, I want to start playing the music. So I'm going to go audio, play sound, music, 100, and does it loop? Yes, it does. I want it to be looping. Okay, so you can see this player character has actually done a lot of things that he should not have done if this was a regular bigger game. Like all this here and all this should not be the responsibility of the player. Really, the only thing you should have put in here was image speed. But because this is a prototype approach, we're going to go this way. Okay, let's talk about when does the player die. So I do want to separate the code as much as I can and put them into separate events. So the player can die in a few scenarios. The first one is when he has a collision with a platform. So if the player collides with the platform, we're going to destroy him. So instance destroy, just like that. So that removes this object from the game. It also calls the destroy event, which is very important because as you'll see later on, we can use that event to run a bunch of code when the player gets destroyed. What's another scenario where the player gets destroyed? Well, let's say you missed a jump, you fell through a gap between 2 platforms, and you fall out of the game. So that is in the other section, outside room. So if you've fallen outside the room, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go instance destroy. In both scenarios, we simply just destroy the player. I think that's it. And then what happens when the player gets destroyed? So this is the next part. So I'm going to go add event, destroy. So this destroy event gets called when you call the instance destroy function on this object. So in the destroy event, we will want to check to see if the current score that we've achieved is higher than the high score. And if it is, then we store it. If it's not, then we don't do anything. So a way we can do that is you can go if score. So score is a variable that exists in GameMaker. It has global scope, so it exists everywhere. And we'll be using it later on, probably in the step event, to give our player some score. So if that score is bigger than a global.highScore, then we need to open that file again, write this new score into the score variable, and then close the file. So you can almost go back to the create event and copy these 3 things just to speed things up and paste them here. Now we're not going to be doing this exact same thing. So we're going to be opening the file, so that's good. We're going to be closing the file, that's good. But the last part, the middle part, is not writing anything to global high score. Instead, we're going to go any. I think there should be a function called write. Yeah. So any write real. This is basically the opposite of read. Score can stay, scores can stay, and then the value we're writing, this is the value that we're putting into here, will be score. Okay, so we're just passing the score value and we're overriding the section and key of the file with our new score. And then we can close this. So this has to happen every time you die. Every time you die, you need to check to see if you've achieved a new high score that's higher than the previous high score. And then finally, we need to restart the game. So do that game underscore restart. Yeah, we're really splitting responsibility of what has to happen here into different events in the object. And it is a good way to code. Sometimes you lose the ability to really fine tune the order of these events, but in some games like this one, it works totally fine. Let's move on to the step event. Actually, no, let's do draw GUI. So I do want to display my high score at the top of the screen, and this is fairly easy to do, so let's do this next. So I'm going to go add event, draw, and draw GUI. The difference between draw and draw GUI, draw happens every frame when it's time to draw everything onto the screen. Draw GUI happens a little bit later when it's time to draw the user interface. Also, draw expects you to manage the sprite as well. Draw GUI doesn't care about the sprite, and so it won't be interfering with anything that the sprite is doing. So draw GUI. Also, draw GUI doesn't use world positions, it uses screen positions to draw things. So it takes a little bit less math, especially if you're doing a game where there's cameras involved. Draw GUI takes a lot less math to figure out the positions of objects. Okay, so for this one, I want to set up some variables or some settings first. First one is draw set font. So I want to choose what font I'm going to use. I'm going to use font GUI. That's this one that we created at the when we set up all our resources. I want to make sure that everything is aligned horizontally in the middle. So for that we have draw set horizontal align, and this we can set to FA center. I also want to set the color of the font. So my backgrounds are kind of dark. Excuse me. So I want to make sure that the font is somewhat bright, and I think white will do that just fine. So draw set color. I'm going to set this to C white. If you're ever wondering where I'm getting these constants from, you can always middle click one of these things, keyboard help, right? Or middle click it with the mouse, and it'll bring you to the documentation, and then there you'll find a section on colors, and it'll give you a big list of colors you can use. You can also create custom colors, but I'm not going to go into that right now. And okay, so we've set up everything we need to draw the text. Now we just need to decide what text to draw. So I'm going to say if global.paused, so this means the game is paused, which really just means you're in the main screen or starting screen. Then I want to draw the high score. So I'm going to go draw text, and I can go room width divided by 2. That's the x coordinate. For height, I'm just going to go a little bit down from the ceiling. So let's say maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 pixels. Let's try 10. And for the string that I want to write, I'm going to be writing high score, colon, space, like that. And then I need to attach the actual high score value onto here. So I'm going to go string global dot high score. Once again, the reason I need to use this string function is because you can't, in GameMaker at least, you can't mix and match strings with numbers. But if you use the string function, it'll turn this number into another, like a string representation of the number. And this way you can show them both. So this is if the game is paused. But what if it's not paused? So I'm going to do else. Then I want to draw in the same location, pretty much the same thing, but instead I want to draw the player score. So I can highlight this whole thing, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. And I'm going to be drawing in the same spot, but instead of saying high score, I'm just going to say score. And instead of saying global.highscore, I'm once again just going to take the score of the player, which is stored in the score variable. Okay, good. Let's move on to the final event in this object. This is a step event. This will include some new code that I don't believe you guys have seen yet, which will be the collision code. So I've gone add event, step, and step. Let's clear this out. Okay, so in the step event, once again, we're going to start the same way. We're going to say that if the game is paused, then we just exit. So what we can do, so global.paused, then we exit. Now, there's only one problem with this. Where are we setting global.pause to be false? So how does the game even start, right? So I think we need to do a little bit of checking before this. We need to check to see if we press the key that has turned off our global paused event. So I'm just going to use, I think I'm going to use the jump key. So I can go key jump. This is a local variable once again. It's going to store the value of my check to see if this button has been pressed. I'm going to use a keyboard function, so keyboard check. And then the key I'm checking for is virtual key space. This is once again a constant, which you can find in the help manual. So all this is doing is it's returning a 1 or 0, depending on whether the player is currently holding down the space key or not. I also want to check if the player has pressed the jump key. Not just that they're holding it down, but also that they pressed it. The reason for this is because we need to start a timer, if you guys remember, to keep track of how long it's being pressed for. So there's a function called keyboard check pressed, bk space. So these two functions will return the exact same value the moment you press down on the space bar, but in the next moment, the check pressed will return false, but the keyboard check will still return true as long as the keyboard button is being held down. That's the difference between the two. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick unpausing feature here. So if global.paused is true, I go into this conditional and I'm going to set global.paused, make sure you spell it properly, to be equal to the value of key jump. Key jump, or you could even do key jump pressed. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. So when key jump pressed becomes true, then I want to set the sorry, let me start again on this. So key jump and key jump pressed will be false as long as you haven't pressed spacebar yet. They'll just continuously be false every frame. So if this is false and you put an exclamation mark in front, then you're taking the opposite of false, and the opposite of false is true. So that keeps setting global.paused to be true. As soon as you press this button, this becomes true. So taking the opposite of true is false. So that sets global.paused to be false. Since it's false, you're never going to enter this conditional again. And that means you don't have to worry about changing the value of global.paused again. Okay, I hope that made sense. Also, once we've gone past this point, that means that the game has officially started. It's not paused anymore. So all this code after here should be running. So I want to make sure that the character image speed is 1. So the character starts running. You could even maybe multiply this by game speed. I'm not gonna worry about that right now. The vertical speed, so vertical speed of the character is going to be the vertical speed is the speed that the game moves the character by every single frame. Number of pixels the character is moved every frame. We need to constantly pull this value downwards. In GameMaker, remember, down is a positive number. So what we can do is we can add gravity to it. So by adding gravity to it every frame, and plus equals is still going to take its current value and add more to it, we are making it bigger. And that should make the character fall faster and faster. The other thing I want to do is I want to be adding gravity not just at a constant speed, but I want to add it at whatever the current game speed is. So I'm going to go global.GameSpeed. So as the game increases, or game speed increases, there should be more and more gravity added to the player because he needs to fall faster. Otherwise, he's going to be jumping over like 10 platforms if they're flying by too fast. And I need to multiply one more time also by global.GameSpeed again. This has to do with physics. If you guys take some physics, I'm not going to go into it right now, but if you take some physics, gravity is a squared, in the physics application of gravity, it's acceleration, so it needs to be squared. Don't worry about the reasoning. It just needs to be multiplied twice by game speed. It grows exponentially based on game speed. So if game speed doubles, gravity quadruples. If game speed quadruples, gravity goes 16 times, and so on. It just needs to be twice increasing, at a squared value. So let's do jumping next. So to jump, the player needs to be touching a platform. So to see if something is touching something else, we can use the if place meeting function. So place meeting. So this will check between two objects. And the two objects I'm checking are, of course, the player. So the X and Y is representing the player. And then, of course, the object that I want to check against. So the object is going to be platform. Okay, you might have noticed that I put a +1 in here. The way this function works is it takes the object that is running this function, in which case it's the player, moves it to this new location. So in this case, it's 1 pixel down. So same location, but 1 pixel down, and checks to see if it's colliding with this other object, which would be a platform. So if all of this is true, then we can set our jump speed, or sorry, our jump time to be equal to 60 times because we're running at 60 frames a second. Our jump time, so jump time, remember, is the maximum amount of time you can have, or you can spend jumping. We're kind of like resetting our jump time to this. And then of course we need to check to set, we also need to set its value to key jump pressed. So this will return either 0 or 1. So if the jump key is not being pressed, our jump time is sitting at 0. As soon as you press the jump key, our jump time becomes the number of frames times number of seconds times our just 1. Basically, it just sets its number of frames we have to be performing this jump. And we set our sprite index to be our S player. Okay, so what's happening here is this whole section is saying that the player is on the ground, and when he's on the ground, we are constantly checking to reset his jump timer, and we're also setting his sprite to be the player sprite, or player run sprite. That's what I should have named it. Moving on, if the player is not touching the ground, that means that the sprite, so else sprite index needs to be S player jump, right? So if he's not touching the ground, obviously he's in the air, so we need to be seeing the jump sprite. Okay, moving on. So now we're going to talk about what happens if you jump. So if key jump, remember key jump is just the jump key being pressed down. So if that has a value of 1, and our jump time is also positive, you'll notice that here I'm not using true or false values, I'm using numbers in my conditional. GameMaker is super generous to us and allows us to use numbers. So any number greater than 0 returns true. So this, as long as it's a 1, it's returning true. And as long as this is a positive number, which it would be if you just press the jump key, it would also return true. So then we can enter this function. And then we want to, what do we want to do? So we want to be decreasing our jump time. So we're going to go jump time minus minus. So the reason for this is because you shouldn't be allowed to jump infinitely. So as long as the key jump is being held down and you have some jump time, we need to be decreasing it by 1 until we run out of jump time. Because as soon as you run out of jump time, you're no longer going to be jumping. And then we're also going to be applying a vertical force or vertical speed, which will be our negative jump speed times our global dot game speed. This does not need to be squared. And we're also going to play a jump sound. So if key jump pressed, and the reason I'm putting this inside this conditional is because you don't want to be playing jump sound if you're already in the air trying to jump a second time. We're going to play audio, play sound, sound jump, and do not loop. Okay, so that's jumping. That takes care of jumping. The last thing we need to do is, one more thing related to jumping is if I've just jumped, but I've let go of the space key, I shouldn't be able to jump again. So then I need to reset my, sorry, how do you do that? We're going to check to see, we need to add one more variable up here, key jump released equals keyboard check released bk space. So this means if you've let go of the jump key, then our jump time needs to be set to 0. So if key jump released, then our jump time equals 0. I'm just thinking we could probably even do this. Sorry I made you guys type this. I think I'm going to try to see if I can do this without using the key jump released, just to save some time. So I'm just going to go yeah, I think I should be able to do this. So if the key jump is not being pressed, that obviously must mean that you've let go of it. Then our jump time needs to be set to 0. And I think this will work because we're checking jump time here and we're resetting jump time here. So this should not interfere with the above two checks. Okay. Moving on. So this all takes care of jumping. That's good. Now we need to take care of falling on top of these platforms and running on top of them and not falling through them. So there's a fairly easy way to do that. So we can go if we're going to be doing another place meeting. We're going to be checking if the player is going to hit the platform on his way down. So the way you can do that is you can take the player's vertical speed and add it onto his Y position and check to see if there's a collision. So if this is true, that means in the next step, or at the end of this step event, the player will be stuck inside one of these platforms. He'll be in a collision with one of these platforms. So if this is true, we don't want this to happen, which means we need to take control of the vertical speed and kind of decrease it until this no longer happens. So the way we can do that is we can do a while loop. A while loop is just a loop that will keep happening until the condition breaks. And the condition we're going to be checking for again is also place meeting. It's also going to be pretty much the exact same as above, except we're only checking 1 pixel down every time. And then v speed equal to 0. Okay, let me try and explain this. So first we're going to check if in the next frame our hero is going to be inside a platform if he was to transition v speed pixels down. If that is true, that he's going to be stuck in a platform, then we go into a while loop, and with this while loop we're going to be checking to see 1 pixel down from your current position. So we're going to take the current position of the hero, which is based on these two, and we're going to be moving it down 1 pixel each time. And if 1 pixel down the player is not colliding with the platform, then we increase his position by 1 pixel. And we keep doing this. We keep doing this until he's reached the platform. As soon as he reaches the platform, like as in the next pixel down would be in collision with the platform, we exit the while loop. That's what this is for. And we set our vertical speed to 0. So because vertical speed is 0, he's not going to be moving down anymore. Okay. I think that's it. So this takes care of all the movement. And as I said, we are throwing a lot of things into the step event here, but this is how you do a quick prototype of something. And the last few things we have to do is we have to take care of our game speed. I need to take care of our score. So I can go score plus equals global.gamespeed. So the cool thing about this is instead of just saying score, it increases by 1 every frame, I can say that it increases by game speed every frame. So as the game speeds up, you start getting more points every step. And I want the global.gamespeed to increase ever so slightly, so I can use the plus equals, and I'm just going to increase it by something really small, like that. Okay. And that is it for the player. So that was a lot of code. I hope it made sense. And I'm sorry I went into so much explanation, but I do want you guys as viewers to understand the logic behind each line of code so that one day you can maybe create your own code. Okay, thanks for watching. In the next video, I'm going to be throwing this all together into the room and testing the game.